Got a show tomorrow, the Circus of Associates for the Buchla Memorial Concerts, and I thought I'd show some of the controllers that I will be presenting. Now, this first controller is Thunder. Thunder is a controller that Don was working on in the 80s, and it's brilliant. First of all, it puts together three of the things that Don really appreciated. Number one was arts and culture. Not just music, but all arts and culture, particularly Native American culture, actually. This one, the pattern is inspired by the Hopi Thunderbird legend and images of it. It is sort of like a bird pattern, but not only that, second, it's ergonomic. It actually fits your hands. If you put your hands down, it just fits them very nicely, and the pattern your hands make. So you've got that, the appreciation of arts and culture, the ergonomics, and also the expression you get from locations. Now, you would think that's great, and maybe you could use this as a drum controller because you can't tell what notes are. I mean, there's no black and white keyboard or even a pattern. I mean, even on the early touch plate stuff like this, which uses a very similar technology, you can see the keyboard. Now, this does inspire a slightly different approach because it's not totally black and white. You can just slide your hands up and down, it's great. But this one, what about this one? Well, I thought it would make a great drum controller, and so we actually started work on Thunder 2, but that project sadly was never quite finished. Nonetheless, just because it's a keyboard that doesn't have black and white keys doesn't mean you can't play it as such. I mean, you can assign whatever sounds you want, and it doesn't have to be pitch. It could be vowel sounds. Whatever you want. So there you go. You have all sorts of ways to make expression with this thing. But that's not the only thing I'm going to present tomorrow. The other thing is lightnings. Now, lightning was the other thing we were working on when I first started working with Don. We were working on the prototypes for Lightning 2. He'd already started Lightning 1, which is great. The optics on Lightning 1 are right there in the brains. Now this one, the brains are here, separate from the optics. Here's the optics that receive it. And Lightning 3, which with slight refinement of some things, a little bit of a Z-axis control, a little bit more crude in that respect, but actually the XY is still spot on. And to show you how that works, it uses this optical technology. Now, inside each one of these wands are these LEDs that flash at the end, and it tells you where the wand is in space. And so that interprets it here. You can see it knows where this wand is. Notice the following the, and this one following the green wand. Green left, green. Now they're independent, so they move independently, and they can have completely independent axes. That is, not independent axes, but independent controls. One could be volume and pitch, one could be timbre, one could be location of the sound, one might strum a guitar, one might play the notes of an accordion. But nonetheless, each one has the expression of up and down and side to side, and it also recognizes gestures, sort of like air drums, that are interpreted when you reverse direction, and therefore you have all these parameters for playing. Music, again, totally open. Doesn't say it has to be a keyboard, but it could, and it doesn't say it has to be a theremin, but it could sort of sound like that. It's definitely in the air and wireless, you might say. But nonetheless, Buchla Lightning 2, Lightning 3, and Thunder. First controllers I'll present, and then we'll go on from there. Next we have the Marimba Lumina. Now the Marimba Lumina I feel a lot of ownership for because I did the circuit board layout and because Mark Goldstein and I put a lot of effort into it, free time, in order to get one ourselves because it was really fantastic. And Don liked to make instruments for his friends, and I was working for Don. I'd like to think I was his friend. So we have here, of course, now we have a regular keyboard in some respects, right? This is like normal pattern. We can play major chords on it, whatever we want. We can play classical repertoire on it, which I have done. And also we have ways of selecting sounds or doing whatever we want with the pads up there. And but there's so much more, of course. We can control with location the sound. Here it's pitch. Here it's going to be a little bit of timbral thing. Here it's sort of volume. And you notice I can actually play up and down in this if I want. And if you want, each mallet can do a different thing. So like the lightning, like the thunder, it's got this location thing happening, which is great. But like the lightning, it also has the ability to sense what hand is playing, or even what mallet is playing out of one out of each four. For instance, so with the marimba lumina, I can tell what mallet is what, and say I could have a regular marimba, or I could actually do something. Let's make the red mallet a different sound. I can play the same note, get a different sound on each one. They're completely independent. It's like having four potentially independent keyboards, one with each mallet. Fantastic. Mallet recognition and location sensitivity. So that's the Marimba Lumina 3.5. But we started with the Marimba Lumina Gold. Now here we have the Marimba Lumina Gold. Now the Marimba Lumina Gold has a special place in my heart. It was certainly the first one we presented in the late 1999 or mid-1999. Don liked to think of it as the last great controller of the 20th century. And it put together the three things that Don really loved about instruments and designing instruments, because he thought of himself as a designer, not as an electronic technician or inventor, but as a designer. And again, the first thing he loved about it was he had a visual aesthetic that he spent a lot of time on. And this one has a brilliant looking curve to it. And not only that, but that curve is ergonomic. Again, as you bring your hands out, you actually get a little bit more range as a mallet player than you would if it was straight. However, in the end, it turned out to be kind of hard to both read music, because your mallets out here get a little further out of the peripheral range for for your visual purposes, and also as you're sliding up and down, say you're doing a chord, the mallets, you don't normally expand them out, but it's a little subtle thing that the distance between here and here is subtly different. Nonetheless, it's pretty cool to play. And we can do the same things here we did with, say, Thunder, with like location, as I pointed out with the 3.5. In fact, it's basically a 3.5, but with a longer range. This is 4 1/3 octaves. The difference is we don't have the pads up here that are independent. The pads and the strips are overlaid sort of on top of each other. They're sort of integral into one thing. And we realized later that it'd be nice to separate those out, eliminate the range a little bit, make it a little shorter, make it straight, slightly easier to play. But nonetheless, this one still looks better. Same parameters. You can use location for various things, timbre, pitch, or if you're playing something that's not a mallet, something else. That's Marimba Lumina Gold. The last module I'm presenting tomorrow is the 252E. Now this is the last module that Don presented to us for a modular system, and I think it's great. It does polyrhythms, and it can do also, it can have the pulses phase against each other as opposed to just polyrhythms. And of course you can do send it to your 208 or whatever 200E module, however 200 module, anything that fits into the Buchla world. And if you're not familiar with cabling and patching up a modular system, this is not unusual. This is patching several pulses and control voltage out of it to control this. So. I'm also plugging it over here into the 200E, which I'll show you in a moment. Of course, no Buchla Memorial Concert would be complete without presenting the Buchla Modular series, the most popular being the 200 series. This is a 200E that I am going to control. While these many patch cables are controlling timbres and pitch and location, I'm going to first control it through MIDI. I'm going to send it control voltage information to the 272E, the quad radio module.
Radio All Access.
$200E, Lightning 3.